Hey guys, Erito here and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to show you how you can basically duplicate or even triple the amount of inputs that you can do with your controller. You may have noticed that you don't have enough buttons on your controller to set up everything in LMU. The way I'm going to show you to do it is a fantastic solution to that. So what you're gonna need is, of course, LMU or any sim racing game really. You're gonna need SimHub. This app allows you to do a million things when it comes to sim racing or even flight simming if you care about that. Like from dashes, the thing we're gonna talk about here is the control mapper. So essentially, instead of mapping your controller directly in LMU, you map it through SimHub. And you're gonna need to install vJoy, which is basically a virtual controller essentially. SimHub requires vJoy, or it can also be done with an Arduino if you have one. You can have like one that's like a USB drive and you just plug into your computer and you can use that. I don't know how to do that, I've never done it. So I use vJoy, it's never failed me so far. I use it for both my wheel, my controller. And the first thing you're gonna need to do is take note of every input that you need for LMU, like brake, clutch, shift up, down, all of that. And you go to SimHub and you see this menu here saying output mapping. You go to assign roles and this is where you type all of your inputs in LMU from LMU, and you see that these are numbered. These are the actual virtual buttons. Make sure that in vJoy you have 128, which is I think the limit. And once you've typed all the controls you need, I will export this and include it in the description if you want to just save some time. And don't forget to also set up these three if you need them. These are the X's. You do not map the steering in SimHub because you need that map directly in LMU so you can then calibrate here. If you want to use these settings, you should map the controller directly in LMU. Other than that, everything else I map it through SimHub. And once you have this set up, you go into source controllers, you add a new source, and your controller should show up here. Mine doesn't because I already selected it. So it'll show up either as a wireless controller or something else. I have a PS5 controller, and once you add it, you go into control mapper, and this is where you actually set up your buttons. So shift down and up, and everything you just click and then press the button. And now this is where you can basically multiply how many buttons you have. You click this button here, add new FN button, which is a function button, and I've set it up for R1. And what this does is once you're pressing this button, basically you can map everything else again. So if I press the FN button and then I press up and down, that's my brake bias. But if I'm not pressing, that's my MFD. So if we go here and you see all the buttons that I have set up, you can see MFD up and down, left, right. But if I'm pressing the R1 button, then it becomes my brake bias and my left and right for increasing or decreasing a value in the MFD, which is incredibly useful. You basically just doubled the amount of inputs that you have. But there's more. you can triple the amount of inputs if you want, or even more. If you go here, you notice that there's a transform. And you notice that I have my pit limiter set to short press. Basically, if I press triangle as a short press, it triggers my pit limiter. But if I do a long press, it then will trigger, you can see here, I mapped the same button, but I set this to long press. So if we go here, you may notice short press, long press. So if I click fast, that's my pit limiter. But if I hold the button or do a long press, you can see it triggers VR center. So once again, multiply how many inputs you have. Another thing you can do with SimHub is, for example, in LMU, you cannot map the same button to multiple functions, but through SimHub you can. So what you do is, let's say, I'm going to use again the pit limiter button, which is triangle. And let's say I want in the replay my triangle to be for pausing and starting again the replay. So you can go here and make a new role. And let's say start, pause. And now we go to control mapper, go to the bottom, and we do again triangle. Don't need to do a transform. And now let's go into LMU and I will show you how you map things within LMU. And the first thing you need to do is delete everything because you don't want to map directly with your controller now. Let's continue the example of the camera or the replay. We go down here to replay, and now in SimHub we want to press this button here, which will open this window, and this is the mapping window. This window should stay on top even if you press the game. The game does have to be in either windowed or borderless mode. It might not work if it's in full screen, but if you do want to use full screen, there is another option. You press this button, you scan that QR code with your phone, and it will open that same mapping window on your browser, on your phone. And once you are in LMU and you want to map your keys, you have to go to wheel and pedals. You don't map it through gamepad because the gamepad only supports your gamepad, while you have to map it in the wheel settings because gamepad doesn't detect vJoy. You can see down here there's the vJoy device, and you go here into the replay, you look for the input that you just set up. There you go, button 53, which is what we set in SimHub. And if we go here into car controls, see the pit limiter is on button 2, which is up here. So it's technically the same button, but that same button presses 2 virtual inputs. And because you cannot pause and start the replay in the race, it won't affect each other, and you can't press pit limiter in the replay. So that's one way you can, again, multiply your inputs. Another thing that you can do in SimHub that you can't do properly in LMU is, let's say you really struggle with trail braking, you struggle with cars that don't have ABS. Something else we can do in SimHub, because we mapped the triggers here, you also do the same. You do, let's say I map my clutch to my other stick, but you mapped your throttle and brake here. You can click this button to add a correction curve, and basically you just adjust the curve to however you like. And what I did with this curve is basically, you may notice this bar at the bottom is about halfway. That's how much I'm pressing the button, the trigger. And you can see that because of the curve, it's actually only sending about 25% of the input. So this gives you a lot more control when trail braking. And this honestly helps a ton. Especially in cars that have ABS, you can see even at the top end, it's basically almost half of what I'm pressing. So it gives a lot more control. And I think that's about it for this. If you have any questions, let me know. I will read the comments. I will also export this if you want to save some time instead of having to type everything down. I'll just put it down in the description. Let me show you this working. If we go here, oh, that's weird because you can't see, but you can just about see the tip of my wheel here. And the force feedback is doing weird things. And you can see I have both my pedals and my controller mapped to the same thing. You can see everything is working just fine. And let me also show you my telemetry. So now you can see at the top of my screen I have my telemetry, and you will see now how much easier I have with the brake. And this car doesn't have ABS. It's a very difficult car to drive with the controller if you're not good with the brakes. If you want, you can also set up a curve for your throttle if you struggle when coming out of a corner. But yeah, that is it. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, subscribe, like the video, and I will be catching you in the next one. Goodbye.